As is the case anytime the president opens his mouth, the White House once again on cleanup duty, saying he didn't really mean the pandemic was over. Watch.
The president said, and he was very clear in his 60 Minutes interview, that COVID remains a problem, and we're fighting it. What he believes is we can acknowledge that the massive amount of progress that we have made.
What the president's reflecting is the fact that we've made tremendous progress against COVID-19.
We are much better off now for a number of reasons, but we are not where we need to be if we're going to be able to, quote, live with the virus.
Oh, he wants to live with the virus forever, and I cannot be convinced otherwise. But as the old saying goes, you can't unscrew a cat. My grandmother told me that thrice weekly. Why don't Democrats follow the president's lead this time? Let's get into it with tonight's party panel. We've got Versus Media podcast host and the Spectator USA contributing editor Stephen L. Miller, suited and ready. We've got Based Politics co-founder, one of my very favorites, Hannah Cox, and director of the Libertarian Institute and editorial director of antiwar.com, Scott Horton. Oh my God, there's so much liberty tonight. I'm going to huff it. Stephen L. Miller, I will start with you. Does anything that come out of the president's mouth have credibility?
Not when his own advisors are telling everyone to never mind everything that he says. I love the idea of Joe Biden going on 60 Minutes and saying he shut down the virus as promised during the campaign, and then 2 days later his entire White House coming out and saying, no, you didn't, no, we didn't, it's still going. And this is a problem. And like you said, with the Washington Post kind of gave the game away when they said, you still have Trump's border restrictions are in place. The student loan giveaway, which was Joe Biden's entire justification legally to do the student loan giveaway, is that we were still in a pandemic emergency. And so you have to think every single White House lawyer probably just the color went right out of their faces when he said that. And this is an ongoing problem. They had to walk back his declaration once again about defending Taiwan for about the 4th or 5th time. So I guess when do the president's words mean something? And if his own advisors don't take what he says seriously, how are voters or how are world leaders or someone like Vladimir Putin supposed to take what he says seriously? It's a problem.
Yes, it's a very, very big problem. And, the consequences, the unintended consequences, maybe they were intended. Maybe I'm giving them too much credit. But they are still violating taxpayers, including student debt forgiveness, which is not popular in purple states, Hannah. So you've got a lot of programs in a lot of places that equal money and control, and that's exactly what statist politicians want. So are you surprised at all that they're pushing back?
No, I'm not surprised at all. And I have to say, I'm thankful I wasn't born a Democrat for many reasons, but lately mostly because I don't have to run around defending things Joe Biden says and cleaning up his messes. This time, what he said was actually accurate. It was just extremely politically inconvenient for people who've had an agenda this entire time, which is to use a crisis to shove through more power grabs and to get policies that they had no shot of ever passing through Congress in this country under that declaration. And so I'm not surprised at all they won't hang it up. I'm not surprised people like Fauci want to continue their 15 minutes of fame by extending this pandemic. But what we need to be doing is what you said in your opening. We need to be demanding answers for what created this pandemic. We need to be demanding answers for why they were carrying out gain-of-function research, torturing animals, giving money to the Wuhan lab, and that has not happened. And so I think that what we really need to see the media do is rally around this and demand that be the focal point, that we say this is over. This has not been an issue for over a year. We have learned to live with it. You don't get to continue micromanaging the economy. And when you did try to, it was a catastrophe. You actually got more people killed because of FDA regulations, because of sending people to nursing homes, because of contracts with ambulances in New York City that mandated they go to overflowing hospitals instead of to overflow hospitals right across the street. There has to be accountability for what these people did over the past 2 years, and I'm really fed up with them thinking they're just going to get away with it.
Yeah, when you've got naval ships and the Javits Center and they are completely empty, and you have narcissists like Chris Cuomo, his stupid brother Andrew, who's patting himself on the back for his COVID
response. No, you had it right, too.
He is kind of a dingbat. I'm not going to lie. But, Scott, I don't think that the American public has the appetite for another protracted war, even if it's of a slightly different variety.
Well, I'd like to see some accountability for everyone in the NIH and CDC and FDA and everyone, and in fact, in all the 50 state governments who implemented these lockdowns and all these crazy restrictions and abused their power, they should all be run out of power.
Yes.
And then there should be a wholesale scaling back of the power of the institutions, the authority of the institutions that they've inhabited. How about 50 amendments to 50 state constitutions, making sure this never can happen again? Things like that. And on the Wuhan lab, I mean, this is the biggest deal in the world. It's like that time Prince Bandar bin Sultan did 9/11, and that time Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. And then we all just go on like, okay, well, I guess everybody kind of knows that there's what, better than 80% chance it was an American government program at that Wuhan lab responsible for creating this germ in the first place that's killed I don't know how many millions of people around the world. And it still is a dangerous germ. People should absolutely be held accountable for that. And yet, it seems like in government and media overall, the narrative is that, yeah, that's the past. We're not going to revisit any of that.
Yeah, well, guess what? It'll happen again because there's not enough accountability. And, you know, they don't acknowledge the outrage. And I hope all the bastards pay for it. All right, party panel, please don't go anywhere. We have many issues to discuss with you in a bit. Are you ready to feel some pain? That's something you might expect to hear at an S&M club if you're lucky. This time it's coming from the Fed. That's horrible news. Tomorrow they're expected to release their so-called pain report, potentially announcing their 5th rate hike since March, another 75 basis points. I think that's on the conservative end. It comes as Americans are spending 13.5% more on groceries since last year. That doesn't feel like inflation's flat at all, does it, party people? Will the hike help ease the pain? Just last month, Fed Chair Jerome Powell said nope, adding that in order to bring down inflation, there will be some pain for households and businesses. Watch.
Reducing inflation is likely to require a sustained period of below-trend growth. Moreover, there will very likely be some softening of labor market conditions. While higher interest rates, slower growth, and softer labor market conditions will bring down inflation, they will also bring some pain to households and businesses. These are the unfortunate costs of reducing inflation.
He can shove his transitory inflation up his Jackson hole. Isn't it about time to just abolish the sadistic Fed? The party panel is back. Stephen L. Miller, Hannah Cox, Scott Horton. So, Stephen, I don't trust a word that comes out of his mouth. I think that, you know, when the message is given directly to politicians like Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren, all they do is change definitions. So words are meaningless, and they don't acknowledge that people are truly hurting.
Yeah, my safe word is recession while we're on that topic, which is pretty much where that's what's going to have to happen. We're going to have to go through an extended recession to get inflation down. And like you said, that of course will be lied to about that, and that won't go acknowledged. They're going to have to redefine what recession means again, as we're kind of currently in the beginnings of one anyway.
Recession doesn't mean
this is all going to happen, of course, right around
2 quarters of negative growth. That's not recession.
Yeah, that's the technical definition that's been accepted for millennia.
Yeah, that's you can thank you can thank cat fellow Paul Krugman for that one. And so this all just comes down to simple things. You can't lie to people about how much money they have in their wallet, or you can't lie to people about their home value. You can't lie to them about their kind of dwindling down 401k, and you can't lie to them about grocery prices. You can lie to them about what a recession is all you want, but those are very tangible things. And as we head into an election, as Joe Biden was saying during 60 Minutes, how this was barely just something that was happening, and it's like, no, this is not barely something that's happening.
I think that is the worst political tactic. And, you know, to Stephen's point, it is going to get worse, Hannah. And that's the problem.
That's the one thing Joe Biden didn't walk back.
Yeah, it's not magically. They're hoping that magically it gets better next month and that, you know, all of a sudden prices go back to 2018 levels. But that's not going to happen. And I don't understand what they think they're doing by gaslighting people. Hannah.
Well, I think that they are wanting to live in their own fairy tale reality, which has always been the case, right? First, they said inflation wasn't going to happen. Then they said it was transitory. Then they finally admitted it was here. And now they're like, here's your pain report. I mean, it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. We've been saying this would happen for some time. And it comes down to the fact that these people don't understand basic economics. They don't adhere to the principles of reality. And I think that we need to quit letting them central plan our economy. They couldn't manage the money and monopoly game, much less this entire economy. And I don't understand why we are continuing to allow the Federal Reserve to exist. It has never done anything but make our lives harder. And this always hurts the people who live on the margins, the people the Democrats claim to care so much about the most. We know that when unemployment spikes, it's going to hurt minorities first. We know that when inflation spikes, it hurts people who are already struggling to pay their bills the most. These people don't get to keep running around and pretending to be bleeding hearts when everything they do out of sheer ignorance hurts people and makes their lives worse.
So, Scott, when will people in this country develop an appetite for getting away from central banking and truly ending the Fed? It's not just a fun liberty hashtag. And the Fed, although it is pretty great.
Yeah, well, listen, Ron Paul popularized the narrative right at the height of the bubble, a year before the last massive crash. People knew that he was right, that they're just setting us up for a fall back then. The reality is our entire monetary system is essentially a big pump and dump scheme. And the
I did that
regular
with breast
people
milk when I
get
was
it
drinking.
coming and going. Yeah, well, so they'll pay your way. It's all free to them. But so what happens is the banks and the
We've been
government
going to the
expand
same
bank
clubs.
credit. And yeah, well, I don't know. I'm from Austin. You guys probably all party together in New York City up there, the fancy pants. But so they pump up the big bubbles and the prices.
That's right.
And then once the prices on the shelf get so high that the lowest hourly wage earners, the lowest people on the economic ladder, start finally demanding their raises, that's when the Fed panics and blames them for the inflation. When they were the ones who expanded the money supply in the first place.
Yeah.
So the last person on the chain to get a cost of living increase takes the rap. And then in that Bloomberg article that y'all sent today, they say in there openly, we're going to try to cause about 1.3 million new cases of unemployment. We're going to try to drive 1.5 million people out of work because we're blaming them for driving up prices and the pressure on prices. But now here's the real rub, is once they start raising interest rates, usually that just crashes the bubbles, as we saw back in 2008, for example. But this time, the price inflation across the board is so much from the monetary expansion of the lockdown period that they would have to raise the rates absolutely through the roof to stop the inflation. So instead, and which they can't do. So instead, we get the worst of both worlds. We have an inflationary depression like the 1970s. And who knows how long it'll last and what it'll bring it to an end.
Yeah, it wasn't
It's a
just
disaster.
the name of my wedding night. All right, many experts say
We
sky
need a
high.
gold standard now.
Yes, we do need a gold standard. By gum, pardon my language. Back to the copy. Many experts say sky-high inflation will probably lead to more automation, boop, 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 aka robots. Elon Musk says he's about to unleash an army of them, reportedly planning to deploy thousands of humanoids for use in his factories and for us normies. Woo! The male is called a buddy. The female is a cat girl. Musk has previously speculated his robot business could eventually be worth more than Tesla as they care for the elderly, perform chores, and act as personal companions. So is Elon ushering in convenience or dystopia, Stephen?
At this point, they're the same thing. Let's just put them in charge, get it over with, and let's just be legends.
Well, if President McAfee isn't here to save us, I guess Elon will have to step in and do it. So is this the best case scenario?
God save the king.
Amen. Or is this an admission of failure, Hannah?
I mean, I think that it can be both, right? I think he's realizing that it is going to be more expedient for him as a businessman to develop these robots. He's previously said that he thought it was too big of a hassle, and I think he's changing his tune. I think innovation can be a really good thing. I'm not somebody who gets super hype on robots, but obviously we like innovation, we like disruption. I mean, but I think that the problem is our government schools, where we have a monopoly on education, are not preparing the future generations for the jobs that will be created by that disruption. So I think for the immediate present, for the workers that will be impacted by this, it'll also be a negative. So it's a lot to balance. And I think the reality is if Elon Musk says he's going to do it, he's probably going to follow through. He's got a pretty good track record. So we need to be really starting to focus on how we actually can get our citizens ready to fill the new jobs that are coming as we move more into automation.
He's got a good track record with impregnating people and his government-funded rocket.
He's just making Westworld real. He's just going to make Westworld
Oh,
real. That's all that's
fascinating.
happening
yes,
here.
that is a fascinating thesis. But when he doesn't like something, he is a fickle mistress, isn't he, Scott? You know, we thought he was going to save big tech and save Twitter from the clutches of angry statists. But, you know, yet again, my followers are stagnating, just like that 70s inflation. Scott, do you trust Elon Musk?
No, absolutely not. And boy, do we need him or somebody to save us from the thought police on Twitter. They just ruined that dang website. And so I don't believe anything this guy says. And frankly, I'm never impressed by this artificial intelligence stuff. Like, if it works so well, then how come it can't make Antony Blinken negotiate with Sergei Lavrov over this horrible proxy war being waged right on Russia's western border for the last 31 weeks? Answer me that.
Because they're too biological. They have too many squishy components and no hard drives yet.
We got to reprogram their algorithm.
Al Gore. Wouldn't it be crazy if Al Gore like revealed himself to be like, I am the first sex robot. Where are you, Tipper? I'm so sorry for getting those massages. Allegedly. Stephen, you can have the last
Nobody's
word
asking
again.
for that.
I think, no, I agree with you there, Hannah. Stephen?
Well, we did have a reset button with Russia. That's about as close as we came.
Yeah, it's sad. Just spray him with Windex. That's the only
You
way.
spelled it wrong.
Well, how are we supposed to spell it? Or smell it?
Oh, hell if I know. I know that Hillary got it wrong when she tried it, though.
Oh,
and then
she-
she
yeah.
backstabbed them on the Libyan war, and that ruined everything.
Well, she ruined everything. She's your next president. I hope you have fun with that. You can thank her later. All right, party panel. Stephen,
I'll
Hannah.
have a good time watching her try.
I know. I just want to watch her supporters cry. That's all I want. It's not too much to ask. Stephen, Hannah, and Scott Horton, thank you all so much for being here. Way to live. Coming up.